So let's begin our knowledge section by talking about this. Yesterday we really looked at when given a triangle, a right angle triangle, and given the two legs, we can then figure out what this hypotenuse is. Today we're going to be working a little bit different because the same concept is going to be there, and knowing the algebra is really important. But instead of working on figuring out the hypotenuse, we're going to find out one of the legs. So when given two of the measurements, when given the hypotenuse and one of the legs, how can we find that other leg, whether it be this one or this one? So let's begin here. Let's say I'm given a right angle triangle. Back to the good old easy one. And I know the hypotenuse is 15, okay? That color doesn't really show that well. Let's try good old brown. I know the hypotenuse, also it doesn't really show great, but whatever. I know the hypotenuse is 15, and I know that this leg is 12. I don't know what this leg is. So I can give this leg either the letter A as a variable or the letter B as a variable. Either way, whether you give it an A or a B, you're not going to go wrong. You just have to give it one of them. So for this case, I'm just going to give this one A. So when I put my formula in, I'm gonna fill in all the information that I know. So if I know A squared plus B squared equals C squared, I don't know A squared. So I'm going to rewrite that one here, A squared. I do know what B squared is, right? B squared is 12 squared. And C squared, well, I know C squared is my hypotenuse. I do know my hypotenuse in this case, so I'm going to write down 15 squared. My next line is going to be fleshing out the math. A squared plus 12 times 12 is 144. And 15 times 15 is 225. So at this point, I've reached a point where we've done this many times in class, and we all know the what's the next step? Well, the next step is to isolate this variable. Okay, so if we need to isolate this variable, that means that this number has to come onto the other side. So if it's a positive 144, when we rewrite this, it has to become a negative. So our next line will look very simple. We're going to have our equal signs line up. A squared equals 225 minus 144. Okay, so now again, we do the math. A squared equals 225 minus 144 is 81. We're done, right? No, we talked about this yesterday. You can't leave that squared. We need to know what that line is. If this is 12 centimeters and this is 15 centimeters, there's no way that this is 81 centimeters because that would be the longest line. So we've got to reduce it. And how do we how do we isolate this variable even further? Well, when we have a square, we know that we do the square root of the other number. So A equals the square root of 81, which means that A equals 9. So our A is actually 9. Okay, we're going to do another one that I'm going to get you guys to do. So let's grab another board here. This one is empty. Perfect. Okay, so let's try this one. I'm going to do, let's draw a tall one this time. Kind of looks like the same as all the other ones. So if I know that this is 9 and this is 6, I don't know what this one is. I'm going to call this one B for right now. So I want you to take your time, try to figure this out, pause the video, and come back when you're done so we can solve it together. Okay, so you're back. Let's solve this one out together as we go along. So again, let's write our formula down. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Let's plug in our information. Well, we know that that's B, so that's going to stay the same, B squared. We know A must be 6 squared, and we know our hypotenuse is 9 because it's our longest, so we're going to put 9 squared there. Let's flush out the math. 36 plus B squared equals 81. We're going to isolate this variable by bringing that 36 all the way onto the side. So we're going to have B squared equals 81 minus 36. Hopefully you're following along. Again, we're going to flush out the math. B squared equals 45. And now we're left with isolating that variable one more time by removing the square. So we're going to have b equals the square root of 45. Now in this case, it's not a perfect square. So we are going to end up with a decimal. And when we reduce it and we bring it to the nearest tenths, we get 6.7 as our answer. Okay, so that is kind of the basis of this whole knowledge section, which is even though the Pythagorean theorem focuses on a squared plus b squared, finding out c squared, when given two of the legs, it's easy to find the hypotenuse. When given one of the legs and the hypotenuse, we can figure out what that other leg is.